Hello, everyone. I don't have any slides prepared. I'm Paweł. I'm a software engineer at Getting Data, and I work at OpenNet for 2 years. Together with Maciej and Kuba, we were Getting Data, and I was working on Spark integration. The Flink integration is something that we've done together with Maciej. I was contributing to Marquez and worked on the home lineage proposal. And yeah, I really like the presentation before, the metaphor guide, that we like Spark integration. And I think it's a cool thing because open lineage makes sense if you call it the cross-platform data lineage. And Spark and some SQL, I think it's a common scenario, common use case within companies. And you would really like to see the lineage of the whole company, or some guys using SQL, query, REST, whatever you call it, and some other guys expressing things in Spark, and then make it an overall lineage of what's there. Who of you has used or tried the open lineage Spark integration? Okay, that's great. What was your experience? Because I want to start with a few questions, because what's difficult for us is getting the right feedback and getting the right feedback on what should we focus on, what's important for the project. And if we do Zooms, then people are not perhaps that willing to chat, to talk, because it's difficult to talk through the Zoom. It was like milliseconds away, and now we are here in a single room, so perhaps it will be easier. I don't know, would anyone like to share some experience, you've seen on docs, open lineage and Spark, you try to do something and did it work out of the box?
Yeah, I can share some information. Yeah, I got a positive message from our backend developers. Yeah, basically told me in the beginning he wants to use a Spark just like their clients, and it takes too long. It's developed the Spark job before to Spark, who wants to too long, and he needs to understand deeply what's something. Yeah, API is to make the job. Yeah, so but later we on the open lineage, which has Spark already. So open lineage to be with heavy lifting, and the intuition is Spark. Very quickly.
Okay. Okay. And what versions of Spark are you interested in? Some specific versions of Spark?
The project Spark. I don't know if you know what's Spark version.
Yeah, because that's an interesting thing, because if we're doing some demo, it's always good to get the latest one and try the things out. But if there is some company that would like to use it, then perhaps they not only have the latest versions. In most cases, they have all the versions that have been seen through the ancient history of their data processing stuff. And that's something I want to ask in another question, because a few days ago, Spark 3.5.0 was released. And so far, we thought, hey, let's support the 3 latest Spark versions. So we do. What does it mean for us to support it? It means that our CI does the integration test of integration against those 3 versions, yeah? And so for today, it's 3.4, 3.3, 3.2. And if we decide to support 3.5, we need to get rid of one of the previous ones, or we can leave it. And I don't know, does anyone have an idea if if it's okay to abandon 3.2, or shall we keep the integration test for it? Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, because the funny thing is that it doesn't mean that much work to us to making sure that the older versions are up and running, that they are working. But it requires, the CI being run, that there is something that has to be done, but it's not a lot of work. So, if we're able to know what the people want to use, that would be, I think, helpful to us either. Okay, and there are more such questions like, would you like, so for now, if you have a Spark job that reads from 3 data sets and writes to 3 output data sets, for OpenLinux, it's treated like 3 different Spark jobs, because each time we write to something, it's a separate Spark action which we treat as a separate job, and it has its pros. It's cool, but I mean, some people may not like it, or prefer to do it a different way, because perhaps something wanted to have to be a single job, no matter how much lines of the code you have within it. So yeah, feedback on that would be also helpful. And actually, even if you don't have anything to be said now, if you don't want to talk now, please try to be active on our Slack channel, because so we're the community, everyone can raise an issue, and if you raise an issue, it doesn't mean we'll work on it tomorrow or this day in the evening, because better things to do in the evening. Like, no, it's not the topic of the presentation. Okay, what can you do in the evening? But the point is that from my side, as a developer working on a project, I would really like to have a feeling that I'm working on the most important things. And if someone on Slack channel writes, "Hey, this thing is not working," and then 2 other guys say, "Yeah, you could do something with it," then it would mean for me, oh man, that's important. And because otherwise, my perspective can be wrong, and I can say, "Oh, some corner case, let's leave it, yeah, let's leave it, and let's see happier later." And yeah, so this leads to funny cases, because it's even hard to say what's the adoption of the Spark. And do you know, how do I know how the adoption works? So, because at the beginning, we used to make, I'm a developer, I make errors, then I fix it, and then this is how the story goes. And a year and a half ago, we had a Spark box that made it unusable. Like, we introduced something that that was breaking the things, because we didn't test it in that case. And there are people writing on the Slack channel 3 weeks after the release, "Hey, I think there's something wrong with it," yeah. And we saw, oh, it's wrong, and it was a nightmare, because first we introduced the bug, and then it turned out it took just 3 weeks. It took 3 weeks to find it out. And when now people do raise an issue, it's more like a corner case. I'm doing a complex SQL query with an old Spark and Iceberg version from 2 years ago, and one output data set is missing. Yeah, so that's how we judge if the our job, yeah, if it's done okay or no. So at what level is the adoption currently? We see what are the questions raised by the people, and if those questions and issues are really complex in corner case, it means we are moving far away from those entrance ones, and the simple things have already been fixed. Some time ago, we introduced the column lineage, and it started off with the proposal 6 or 7. Oh,
Like PR 647 easy one.
yeah. So it's a proposal on what should be changed within a spec, to support it. And if you show the example of the, so there's a column lineage. You don't see it because it's too small, but we can try to zoom it, and if not, I can read it. Reading the slides to be fun. So the story started on how would we like to express the column lineage, because column level lineage seemed to be pretty cool and the missing feature to niche platforms. And I think initially we started with, that's the way we would like to express within a spec the column level lineage. And I remember I showed it to Maciej, and his feedback was like, why don't we create a facet to tell that there should be no wars in the world, or hunger should be treated. So I mean, what the standard didn't make sense at all. So it's not the point to invent the spec that describes how column lineage should be presented. The crucial thing is here, what are you able to extract from the queries, from the data processing jobs? You're given SQL or Spark job, what can you extract out of it? And and the feedback was, let's not merge this PR, let's try it with a proof of concept, trying to find out what's doable. And and we jumped into the Spark code base. And actually, our Spark integration is cool because we attach the jar to the running Spark job, and we can execute any code we like attached to it. So we do have an access to a Spark logical plan. So if you're working on data frames, data sets, or write a Spark SQL, you call an action because Spark is lazily evaluated. So it first creates transformations, and then at some point it triggers an action which evaluated. And this action is presented as a logical plan, and which is actually a tree. Its root node is an output data set, then there's a whole tree of what you defined, and the leaf nodes are the input data sets. And before column lineage, we were able to traverse the whole tree, identify the root node. This would be the output data set, the leaf nodes, which are the input data sets. But we had no way, how the leaves affect the roots of the root. And are we able to track the dependency between the expressions? And how much work is it? Because, we're afraid that if you look at Spark SQL functions, there are like 100, 200, or 500 of them. And if we had to cover all of them to provide column lineage, we'll never do that. And once we did it, it wouldn't be up to date anymore. Because there's so much of this. But what we found out that although there's a lot of code within the Spark, there are some structures, some patterns that we can use. And for each node within a plan, we can identify what are the input fields and what are the output fields, and which one depend on another. And that is the interesting finding, because this allowed us to solve this problem regardless of how big is the logical plan, how complex is it, as long as for any type of the node we can detect its input, output, and how do they interact with each other, we can build column lineage out of that. And it turned out that there are not that many types of the nodes within the tree, like aggregate, projects, perhaps a few more, aggregate by something and so on. But it's like 5 to 10 of them. And and this allowed us to prepare the proof of concept for Spark. And once it was working, we had an integration test for that. We could proceed with the facet within the open lineage spec, because we knew it's doable. And that's the cool thing about lineage, that we say open lineage is just a spec. It's not just a spec, it's just a spec verified on the real use cases that is applicable, and you can, out of the box create such lineage plans. And that means much more than that. Later on, so we knew that Spark plus some SQL, that's the combination of technologies that are common in many stacks, that would like to also extract column lineage from the SQL. And then again, Maciej is the guy with most brilliant ideas, or let's say brilliant ideas. And he came with the news that there is a great third-party SQL library, SQL parsing library, which is written in Rust. And we were like laughing for 30 minutes. Maciej, why Rust is better than Go? I mean, we're laughing because we didn't understand what are the benefits of applying Rust here. We do have Java in our stack. We do have Python. Yeah, you can fit anything you else like into it, but what's the reason in doing so? And so third-party library is called SQL Parser Res. It's really it allows really rich SQL syntax. So it's capable of dialects. And if you look at that code, so I didn't program in Rust before, but it seemed to me really cool how many things can you express with so limited amounts of code, even if you don't know the language. And which I found really great. And what's the benefit for us in open lineage as we're using Rust? Well, because we needed something that is capable of parsing SQL that we can apply for both Java and Python world. So for Python, because we're having integration with Airflow, and triggering SQL from Airflow is a really common use case. And for Java, because within the Spark integration, within the Spark you can call some SQL through Spark JDBC, and having the single parser would be great. So that was the cool thing about the Rust, and that what Maciej did. So he bundled the SQL parser library in a way that we can use it from both Python and Java. We do have clients for that. And there was also a guy who contributed to extract the column level lineage from the SQL. within that library. And it's an open source library, and we found it cool because we were able to extend it. So we got the users that use Snowflake, and in Snowflake there is things like copying or create stage, which are not the part of the SQL standard, but they're really useful. And people need to take just the files and extract data from them in a SQL way. It allows a lot of more SQL scenarios, and so we added the support for the syntax within the SQL parser, and actually can extend it even more. And I think it's a combination of great features, SQL plus Spark, and being able to extract lineage and column lineage out of this. At some point, we added transformation type. I think it's Julian had this. So we wanted to describe, because there's an output field, and we say, hey, these are the input fields that we use to produce it. And we wanted to make it more descriptive. Okay, but how did those fields were used to produce the output field? And we've added transformation type. Actually, two fields. One is like human readable, put anything you like. The other one is transformation type, because the important use case for this is PII data. Be able to find out where do you have PII data within your organization, and in some moments people do some masking caching of the personal data because they don't need it anymore for their machine learning AI, whatever we call it stuff. So we wanted to have a marker so that you can mark, hey, after that point, downstream data sets do no longer contain PII data. We introduced, some markers like mask identity to notify it's a direct copy of the data. And recently we have found some limitations of this approach. Like we've introduced transformation type. Perhaps we did it and we could do it better so that it's not on the level of the output field, but it should be on the level of input field, because they can have different transformation types. The other thing is, what does it mean for data to be masked? Some claim it's not accurate enough, and it's okay, it's right, but it's really difficult how to make it more accurate while still leaving some option for other users. So I think there is a further work that's going to be done with the column lineage, but we're already pretty happy with its adoption and with the amount of issues that people are raising in the GitHub, and how extensive those issues are. I mean, if you're an author of such code and you see an issue, its whole lineage is not working well for merge into commands on Iceberg. I'm always happy with such issue, because it means that it works for the basic scenarios. Perhaps it works for merge into, but if merge into is run on Iceberg, then you are having such issues. And if you reach that point, it means you needed to reach 10 points before, and you should have succeeded with them because you were asking at the level 10. So that's nice. And yeah, I think I'm actually done.
Any questions?
Okay.
Present,